If you like our video, click the button to subscribe to our channel and get easy access to new content. To see our full suite of ad-free video courses, instruction manuals, and quick reference guides, visit us at www.teachucomp.com. The Freeform Pen Tool in Photoshop lets you draw freehand paths and shapes, or magnetically trace the outline of image content in a layer to create a path or shape in a Photoshop document, much like the magnetic lasso tool. To use the Freeform Pen Tool in Photoshop, click the Freeform Pen Tool button in the Tools panel. This tool shares the same button as the Pen Tool, Curvature Pen Tool, Add Anchor Point Tool, Delete Anchor Point Tool, and Convert Point Tool, and the button shows the icon of the tool last selected. So, if needed, click and hold down on this button in the Tools panel, and then select Freeform Pen Tool from the side menu that appears to select it. If needed, to show a drop-down menu of saved tool presets from which you can choose if you created any for the selected tool, click the Click to open the Tool Preset Picker button at the left end of the Options bar control panel and select a saved preset choice. Next, select the drawing mode to use for the Freeform Pen tool from the Pick Tool Mode drop-down in the Options bar control panel. To draw a path, select the Path choice, which is the default. Alternatively, to create a shape, select the Shape choice from the drop-down. This choice determines the other options that then appear in the Options bar control panel. Relatedly, then select where to create the path or shape using the selected drawing tool. If drawing a path, then select the path in the Paths panel to which to add the new path component. If you do not select a path before drawing with the Freeform Pen tool, the path is added to the default work path in Photoshop instead. The work path is a temporary path to which you can save path components you create. Alternatively, if drawing a shape with the selected drawing tool, select a blank raster layer in the Layers panel to convert into a shape layer instead. If you select a layer containing content in the Layers panel, you will instead create a new shape layer above the selected layer in the Photoshop document. Alternatively, if you do not select any layer in the Layers panel, and the Path Operations dropdown in the Options bar control panel is set to its default New Layer choice, then a new shape layer is added to the top of the layer stack when you draw the shape in the Photoshop document. To set the way the individual path component lines appear in Photoshop as you draw with the selected drawing tool, click the Set Additional Pen and Path Options dropdown in the Options bar control panel. A preview of the path component line display within the document window when a path component is selected using the current settings then appears at the left side of the drop-down menu. To change the path component line thickness in Photoshop, select a choice from the Thickness drop-down. Alternatively, type a value between 0.5 and 3 pixels into the Thickness field. To set the path component line color, click the Color drop-down and select a choice. To set the error tolerance threshold when fitting anchor points along the curved path component lines you draw, enter the pixel tolerance threshold into the Curve Fit field. To make the Freeform Pen tool magnetic, so it adds anchor points as you trace the outline of layer content, check the Magnetic checkbox. This then makes the tool act like the magnetic lasso tool, except it draws paths instead of selections. If enabled, to then set the pixel width to consider for the path from the edge of the content, enter a value into the Width field. To set the percentage of edge contrast to consider for the path, enter a percentage into the Contrast field. To set the frequency with which it adds anchor points to the path, enter a value into the Frequency field. To enable using tablet pressure to change the width, check the Pen Pressure checkbox. Note that these settings apply to all the pen tools and drawing tools in Photoshop. To close this menu when finished, Click the Set Additional Pen and Path Options dropdown in the Options bar control panel again. To enable or disable the magnetic effect when using the Freeform Pen Tool without adjusting its settings, check or uncheck the magnetic checkbox in the Options bar control panel. To then draw freehand lines with the Freeform Pen Tool in Photoshop, hover your mouse pointer over the location at which to start drawing the path component. Your mouse pointer should look like a pen tip with a wavy line next to it, which shows you are about to draw a new path component. Then click and drag to start drawing the freeform line. To finish drawing and close the path component, hold your mouse pointer over the starting path line point until your mouse pointer looks like a pen tip with a small circle next to it. Then release the mouse button to convert the path you have drawn into anchor points and line segments and close the shape. Alternatively, to finish drawing without closing the path component, simply release your mouse button at any time you wish. Alternatively, to trace content in the Photoshop document when using the magnetic Freeform Pen Tool, click at a point on the border of the content to trace to add an initial anchor point. Then slowly drag along the content's border to let the tool automatically add anchor points as it finds them. To manually add an anchor point, hover over the place at which to add the anchor point, and then click. To delete the previous anchor point when tracing, press the Delete key on your keyboard. Back up, and then drag forward again as needed. To finish and close the path, drag back to the initial anchor point, hover over it until you see a small circle icon appear next to your pen tip mouse pointer icon, and then click. Alternatively, double-click at any point along the way to automatically draw a line back to the initial anchor point. You can draw multiple path components, also known as subpaths, within a single path selected in the Paths panel. You'll examine selecting path components and path component segments in a later lesson. After selecting multiple path components or shapes, you can then use the other buttons which appear in the Options bar control panel to align, distribute, and merge selected paths and shapes in Photoshop, which we will also discuss later. In addition to creating paths, the Freeform Pen Tool can also create shapes. You use the same drawing techniques when creating shapes with the Freeform Pen Tool as when drawing paths. However, instead of drawing paths in the Paths panel directly, you draw shapes in layers in the Layers panel as mentioned earlier in this lesson. To draw shapes after selecting the desired layer in the Layers panel, and then selecting the Freeform Pen Tool in Photoshop, select the Shape choice from the Pick Tool Mode dropdown in the Options bar control panel. Then set the options for the Freeform Pen Tool in the Options bar control panel. The shape options when drawing a shape using the Freeform Pen Tool are the same as when drawing a shape using the Pen Tool, as shown in the previous lesson titled Using the Pen Tool in Photoshop, so we won't cover them all again in this lesson for brevity's sake. The remaining options are the same as when drawing paths with the Freeform Pen Tool, as we just discussed earlier in this lesson. However, there is one new checkbox option that is enabled. To align the vector shape's edges to the pixel grid, check the Align Edges checkbox. After setting the options for drawing shapes with the Freeform Pen Tool, then use it to draw a shape within the selected layer using the same drawing techniques as when creating a path. Notice, however, that this time you will see the stroke and fill data appear when you finish and close the path component. At the same time, its shape layer is then selected in the Layers panel. To show the path for the selected shape layer, click the Paths panel in Photoshop to show its shape layer name Shape Path Path, where shape layer name is the name of the selected shape layer. This path only appears in the Paths panel when its shape layer is selected in the Layers panel. Remember to click the subscribe button to see more of our videos. See our full suite of courses, instruction manuals, and quick reference guides at www.teachucomp.com.